Hi, welcome to the Haystack. My name is Jonathan. If you're new to the channel, please consider liking and subscribing. Um, I know at least 100 of you are new subscribers, so I'd like to thank Christian Homestead for that. Thank you, Jared. Um, and full disclosure, I um, I wasn't ready to go full on yet, but I do appreciate the fact that um, you went ahead and did this and got me going because it really gave me a kind of pushed me to get things moving. And this is actually a good time. So, for you guys who saw the last couple of videos, yes, I have a new baby boy, um, a new son. So now, four kids, three sons, one daughter. And everything is just amazing. Had a lot of help from the ward, everything, help from family. Anyways, thanks again, Jared. Um, I will be meeting with Jared, doing an interview with him in the next month or so. I'm excited about that. I hope I'm ready. Um, until then, I'm gonna try and put out some better content and a little bit better editing for you. And I hope you enjoy it. Please leave comments and there's lots of stuff, lots of comments I've actually received that I really want to go over. And lately, I've been writing down a lot of my studies, and I've studied everything from geography to salt to ancient Egypt. And I think today probably go over Joseph, Joseph from Egypt, and he honestly is my favorite all time Old Testament prophet. I just I just love that story so much, and so I'll explain to you why and show you some patterns of how the situation of Egypt is very similar to the situation of the United States. At least to me, it seems that way, and I'll show you. Um, I know a lot of people have different views on dates of when Abraham lived and all that stuff, dates of patriarchs. I get that. Tons of disputing dates. Even the church doesn't give any kind of definitive timeline. There's a general timeline, and so that's what I've done here. Is I've given some general timelines of things that we do know, and then it breaks down into years that are absolutely firm. So don't take my dates and things here as gospel. I mean, a lot of this stuff, you may find that Wikipedia has more accurate dates, for example, my Egyptian dynasties, because I'm trying to learn from a wide variety of Egyptologists, archaeologists, and scholars, and just what's generally accepted. And unfortunately, most of them disagree. And so I'm trying to see where these guys kind of line up. And the way I take notes may not be the way you take notes either. So this is basically to give me anchor points, things to reference, and a general idea, right? So you'll see like question marks from time to time because uh, I just haven't cleaned this up quite yet. So if you like these types of charts, I hope that this is helpful. And I'm still in the middle of cleaning it up and making it easier to read for you guys who are actually viewing this. If you're just listening, I'll try and describe it and talk about um, what really stands out to me. So the story with Joseph is just, oh man, where do I even start with that? I'm not going to tell the whole story. Um, but I was doing a study on Joseph and came to realize just some really random things. And the thing that stands out to me is a million things, but today we're going to focus on him and his wife and the the context of everything for his life and everything. Um, so we know on the timeline what we have. Where is he? Abraham visits Egypt during this dynasty. Sodom, Gomorrah, Isaac. Um, Here we go. Joseph. So Joseph is accepted by some as coming in between the 12th and 13th dynasty in Egypt. And with Egypt, if you're unfamiliar, um, let me show you. They actually have an upper and lower Egypt, and that basically describes. I keep trying to close up on it. Sorry. Um, so Upper Egypt is actually down here in the south, um, because the water runs up this way south. You'll notice this a lot in the Book of Mormon as well. When they're in previous passages going up to a particular land, they're saying, "I'm going up to the land," but what they're doing is they're following the path of water. It's up, down. So they may say up to the land, southward. you know, I don't think they combine it like that. But this is the type of stuff we see in the Book of Mormon, and and it would make sense that these guys are from the Nephites. They're from the tribe of Manasseh, the oldest son of Joseph and Asenath. And so they're going to have a background of Egyptian writing, as well as that given context of the writing in 600 BC when Nephi left. And they went back and grabbed the brass plates. The brass plates, I think, would obviously have some form of Egyptian writing in there because it's their genealogy. So unless they've purely rewritten their geology in Paleo Hebrew, then I don't know. I think that they preserved some of their language and likely took on some of the attributes of the Egyptian language as well. But Joseph was taught by his father Jacob, Israel, how to read Egyptian. This is what made Joseph so valuable to the Egyptians. The fact that during this period, you have the Hyksos migration. The Hyksos are the shepherd kings. These are also people out of the land of Canaan. They're migratory people, just like Abraham. They're most likely Amorites, who in the biblical text we see them kind of infiltrate other Mesopotamian areas. And they did the same thing to Lower Egypt, which is the north. So here we have some key places. In the Exodus, we read about Ramesses, which is also called Tanis, and Pithom. And this is where Israel was placed, was in Goshen. So the Hyksos were Shemitic people from the line of Shem. Whereas down here, you had Hamitic people who were likely the first occupants of Egypt. They're Nubian, so African. And they primarily had the southern portion of Egypt. So all the way down here, this is down here is where you're going to get the Valley of the Kings, and you get the Great Pyramids out here. But then the way it worked back then is that they had co-regents. So generally, you'd have one pharaoh serve as the high king, and then you'd have a low king serving as a co-regent for the other area. And that's because they're constantly battling Nubian groups down here. But then up here is a huge, huge trade outlet. This is the first line of defense. So this area in Egypt needs to be exceptionally strong. But what happens early on in these early Egyptian dynasties is that you have Hyksos groups migrate through. Obviously, we know Abraham visits very early on, probably sometime in the 12th dynasty, probably during the reign of Amenemhet and Senusret, which is Sesostris the Third. So this is likely the time period during these rulers, Senusret and Amenemhet, when Abraham visits. And we could look to the book of Abraham for that. But Abraham would have came in as kind of like a grand sheik, great group. And so this is where we likely see some of the Hamitic things, the temple building that they had back then. Now, what's his name? Bruce Porter does a great presentation talking about the Axis Mundi. Essentially, when the Earth was first created, it was all water, but then caused the dry land to appear. And where the dry land appeared was the point of creation, where God would then go down, be the Axis Mundi, and then from there would create all other things, right? So in front of our temples, we have reflection pools. In Egypt, it's well known in the Book of the Dead that so as below, or so as above, is also below. So basically, things that are in the spirit world are also created physically. And that goes along with what we believe as well, is all things are created spiritually before they're created physically. And so where we see mounds, like the mound builders, temples, this is basically mound upon mound upon mound. You get a step pyramid. Basically what you're doing is you're going through the temple endowment. It's symbolic of the endowment, how you're buried. You're going closer to heaven, and heaven is coming closer down to you. So again, Bruce Porter does a great presentation talking about the different temples that illustrate this and how they're constructed. And this is basically coming off of Ham's lineage and having Pharaoh. They're creating a patriarchal, long-term, patriarchal, short-term, immediate family, right? We handle the immediate family. The long-term family is matriarchal, where we lean to our Adam and Eve cleave to one another, but lean more towards the woman's household. We tend to do that today too. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that. But the posterity of Ham essentially took that Melchizedek structure of society and temple and established a functioning nation. Even though he lacked priesthood authority, they still had that essential structure. Now, the thing is, with the patriarchs, that lineage goes with Shem, the patriarchal lineage of priesthoodship. So these guys lacked the priesthood, but still had the organization of that. This area was just crazy. That's where we get all our first patriarchs, Peleg, and all that. This is all going to be through Shem, well, from Noah, and uh, and that's the main source of our record. Ham went ahead and did the best that they could off of the information that they had, but again, there's apostasy. So when Abraham comes through here, there are certain things which the Lord has revealed to Abraham that he sees here. In fact, this is likely where we get the ability to read, write, and study Egyptian. It seems like the brothers of Joseph did not quite know Egyptian, possibly. Joseph, it was pointed out that he was favored and he was educated in all the things of his father. And so this was what made him valuable in Egypt. And Hyksos, Canaanite groups, also coming off of people, Abrahamic peoples who migratory, infiltrate, come into a society. They're known as shepherd kings. They're known for their flocks, their oxes, their cows, and that made them very valuable. And obviously, there's really good grazing out here, probably better than anywhere else. So that made them very valuable. So the Pharaoh taking in Joseph, there's a lot going into that. The fact that he knows how to communicate and work with Canaanite groups, migratory groups, he can handle this upper portion of Egypt, while the other pharaoh can likely focus more on the southern portion. Not only that, but he had all the organizational skills. Now, the Israelites end up becoming associated with the Hyksos people. The Hyksos were seen as like dirty, inappropriate, no manners. And because the Egyptians basically saw Canaanites, they don't differentiate the Hyksos migratory groups from the Israelites. So this is where you come into seeing the use for Joseph at the time, but then falling out and end up getting what we see in the Exodus. Now Joseph, he was married to Asenath. Asenath's father was the where's it? The high priest of On, which is modern day which is Heliopolis. Now On is a temple for the god of Atum. That, let me see, where's that? Okay. So I got your Hebrew gods, your Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and their associated parallels. Atum was that premortal god, the god before gods, the god who created all things, who created the earth and everything, and created the other gods that came from him. Then you have Thoth, which that's actually supposed to be Enoch. And that gets into the book of Joseph, which was not quite translated, but was in the possession of Joseph Smith. And it goes over the endowment and lots of things that the Freemasons had, but also things that we end up receiving. Goes after Melchizedek, form of a Melchizedek organization, and very beneficial. Now, the funny thing about who the high priests are, let me see how much time I have left. All right, 10 minutes. Holy junk monkeys. Okay. Thing about that is all the high priests were also heads of state. And the heads of state in the Egyptian household in that kingdom, they all studied at the temple. The temple was a presentation. The temple taught people things. Kind of today, wicked people use Hollywood to teach us things and news to alter our narrative and to get us to think a particular way. Well, this is the ancient way of teaching, given through presentation in temples. And Asenath, Joseph's wife, her father's name was Potipharah, I think. And we know that he was sold to Potiphar. It was Potiphar's wife who framed him and got him put into jail. Potiphar was the head of the guard. Now, the thing is ancient Egypt at this time looks a lot like what you would probably expect the millennium to look like, or a perfect society. Is these guys held priesthood authority, but also held positions within the community as well. So the head of a guard would also be a high priest in one of the temples. And this being in this portion of Egypt, Pithom was a capital. I think it came in much later. This became a new capital during Moses' time. And on, you would have actually had a capital around here. So, keeping everyone together and close, all the heads of state, that would have been very smart. So, I could easily see Potiphar and Potipharah actually being the same person. In fact, that would be very poetic. That the Amorites who sell Joseph to the Egyptians, who are also Hyksos groups, Canaanites, that have came into Egyptian society, into ruling class. The pharaoh was likely Shemitic pharaoh, a Hyksos pharaoh, and so it's poetic that he's by the very people that has sold him, he ends up ruling over. Same thing with his brothers, and there's far more to go into there. On top of that, he is given Asenath, which is the daughter of Potiphar. If Potiphar is Potiphar, then that would be the daughter of the woman who accused Joseph of assaulting her. So it's kind of like weird how that works. And in Egyptian society, I mean, he was still in jail. So they probably still thought that that was his daughter. And, but intermarrying within the family was kind of a gross common thing that they did. So whether they knew it or not, I mean, it all worked out. And because they're a matriarchal society, it's actually they need a female to come into play to help continue on the reign of the kings. So giving them an Egyptian high priest, or a daughter of a high priest. Let me see how much time I have left, because there's a lot to get into that too. So the daughters and women that served in the temples at the time were held just as high as royalty, and they're considered the what is it, the wife of Ra or daughter of Ra, something like that. But they performed temple ordinances and presentations, and were held to high esteem, and they trained in the university, which is basically the temple. And so Joseph would have had that knowledge to do that. He wouldn't have been able to work in the temple himself because he believed in the one true God. And because he had a different God, he had to serve in the household of Pharaoh, or of Potiphar. and could not serve in the temple. But being married to someone who does go into that, it really, really meshes him very well into Egyptian society. Um, so there, that it's very poetic if that's accurate. It's all speculation on my part, but speculation with a lot of digging. And Potiphar, I'm not sure if he takes on a different name in the temple as he would as captain of the guard in his own household, because in the temple he's being pulled from the temple, and it was Potiphar who really pushed this for Pharaoh. Not only that, but interpreting dreams and things like that, visions, they actually had a priestly calling for that. Now, he couldn't take that on because he doesn't believe in that God, but what he could do is he could be a vizier or a co regent and could be a placeholder if that Pharaoh had no sons, could be a placeholder as somebody where that could still rule the kingdom and likely not last very long if he ever did come into play as that. But from what we know is we have other pharaohs that come in that did not know Joseph, and we'll get into that next time. Guys, I'm running out of time. Please like and subscribe if this is something that interests you. I really want to dig into this. And I probably am not using the time wisely, but this is just something that really fascinates me. I want to get into the different theories, LDS and non LDS, of old and young Earth creation, and how both can be seen as positive. I do want to touch on one of my previous videos. I stated that Peter lived 24 years after seeing the resurrected Christ. That was wrong. So I got that wrong. Nevertheless, the 24 elders still works out. And we might as well touch on that next time too. So guys, please like and subscribe. I appreciate the 100 extra of you that jumped on, and I hope that some of you guys find some value here and that this is interesting for you. If you have pointers or something else you'd like to see, more things that you'd like to hear about, I can actually prepare for that, and we'll get going on that. So thank you again. Thank you, Jared with Christian Homestead. Guys, take care. Have a great day.